Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Nellie fidgeted in the waiting room chair, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The sterile smell of disinfectant filled her nostrils, a constant reminder of where she was and why. She glanced down at her hands, noting the slight tremor in her fingers as she clutched the pamphlet on electrolysis. A door opened and a voice called out, "Nellie, we're ready for you now." Nellie stood, smoothing down her blouse and taking a deep breath. She followed the nurse into a small consultation room where two women in white coats waited. "Hello, Nellie. I'm Dr. Angela Thompson, and this is my colleague, Sally Johnson," the older of the two said, extending her hand. Nellie shook it, trying to ignore the roughness of her own palm. "Nice to meet you," she murmured, her voice catching slightly. "Please, have a seat," Sally said, gesturing to a chair. "We understand you're here to discuss electrolysis for facial hair removal. Is that correct?" Nellie nodded, sinking into the chair. "Yes, that's right. I've been on hormone therapy for a while now, but—" She trailed off, her hand unconsciously rising to touch her chin. Dr. Thompson leaned forward, her expression compassionate. "But the facial hair is still an issue. That's completely normal, Nellie. Hormone therapy can slow hair growth, but it doesn't typically stop it entirely." "Exactly," Nellie said, relief washing over her at being understood. I'm tired of shaving every day, of worrying about shadow or stubble showing through my makeup." Sally nodded, jotting down notes. "That's why electrolysis can be such a game changer for many of our patients. Unlike laser hair removal, it's permanent and works on all hair colors and skin types." "How does it work?" Nellie asked, leaning forward slightly. Dr. Thompson pulled out a diagram. "Essentially, we use a very fine probe to deliver an electrical current directly to the hair follicle. This destroys the follicle, preventing future hair growth." Nellie winced slightly at the word destroy, but forced herself to focus on the potential results. "And it's safe?" "Absolutely," Sally assured her. "It's been used for over a century and is FDA approved. There can be some discomfort during the procedure, and you might experience some redness or swelling afterward, but these effects are temporary." "How long does it take?" Nellie asked, her mind already racing ahead to logistics. Dr. Thompson sighed softly. "That's the tricky part. It's a process, Nellie. Each hair has to be treated individually, and you'll need multiple sessions. Depending on the extent of hair growth, it could take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years for complete removal." Nellie's heart sank. 2 years? Sally jumped in quickly. "But you'll see progress along the way. Many patients report feeling significantly more confident after just a few sessions." Nellie nodded slowly, trying to process all the information. "And the cost?" The two medical professionals exchanged a glance. "It can be substantial," Dr. Thompson admitted. "Unfortunately, it's often not covered by insurance. We can provide you with a detailed estimate based on your individual needs." Nellie's mind whirled with numbers, trying to calculate if she could afford it. The thought of waiting, of continuing to battle her facial hair day after day, made her chest tighten with anxiety. I think I want to do it," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Sally smiled encouragingly. "That's great, Nellie. We'll set you up with a test patch first, just to make sure your skin reacts well to the treatment." The next hour passed in a blur of paperwork, explanations, and scheduling. By the time Nellie left the office, her head was spinning, but a small spark of hope had ignited in her chest. Weeks passed, and Nellie found herself back in the same office, this time lying on a treatment table as Sally prepared the electrolysis equipment. "Are you comfortable?" Sally asked, adjusting the bright light above Nellie's face. "As comfortable as I can be," Nellie replied with a nervous laugh. Sally patted her arm reassuringly. "Just remember to breathe. Some areas might be more sensitive than others, but we can take breaks whenever you need." The treatment began, and Nellie gritted her teeth against the sharp, stinging sensations. She tried to focus on her breathing, on the end goal, on anything but the discomfort. "You're doing great," Sally murmured periodically, her steady hands moving methodically across Nellie's face. By the time the session ended, Nellie's skin felt raw and tender. She sat up slowly, blinking against the sudden shift in perspective. Sally handed her a mirror. "Have a look. Remember, there will be some redness, but that should fade in a day or two." Nellie's hands shook slightly as she raised the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, skin pink and slightly swollen. But beneath that, she could already see a difference. Patches of smooth skin where coarse hair had been just hours before. Tears welled up in her eyes, a complex mixture of emotions rising in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. Sally squeezed her shoulder gently. "This is just the beginning, Nellie. We've got a long road ahead, but we'll get there together." As the weeks turned into months, Nellie's face gradually transformed. With each session, more and more of her true self emerged from beneath the mask of unwanted hair. But the journey was far from easy. One particularly difficult day, Nellie found herself staring into the mirror at home, tears streaming down her face. Despite the progress she'd made, all she could see was Simon, the person she'd been before. The strong jaw, the hint of shadow that still persisted no matter how much she shaved or how many electrolysis sessions she'd had. In a fit of frustration, she yanked open her closet, pulling out a dress she'd bought months ago but never had the courage to wear. She struggled into it, the fabric catching on her broad shoulders, the waist sitting awkwardly on her frame. A sob tore from her throat as she looked at herself in the full-length mirror. The dress that was supposed to make her feel beautiful and feminine only seemed to highlight everything she was trying to change. A knock at the door startled her out of her spiral. "Nellie, it's Sally. I brought those aftercare products we talked about." Nellie froze, torn between hiding and desperate for comfort. Come in," she called out, her voice shaky. Sally entered, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. Without a word, she set down the bag she was carrying and crossed the room, enveloping Nellie in a hug. "Oh, honey," she murmured, rubbing Nellie's back as she broke down completely. "I don't know if I can do this," Nellie sobbed into Sally's shoulder. "It's too hard. I look in the mirror and all I see is him." Sally gently guided Nellie to sit on the edge of the bed. "Listen to me, Nellie. Transition is a journey, not a destination. What you're feeling right now is valid, but it's not the whole story." Nellie wiped at her eyes, smudging her mascara. "But what if I never pass? What if I always look like a man in a dress?" Sally took Nellie's hands in hers. "First of all, passing isn't everything. Your identity is valid regardless of how others perceive you. But more importantly, you're in the middle of your journey. You can't judge the final result when you're only partway there." She stood up, guiding Nellie back to the mirror. "Look again, but this time I want you to really see yourself. Not Simon, not some idealized version of Nellie, but you, right now, in this moment." Nellie took a shaky breath and forced herself to look. She saw the redness from her latest electrolysis session, but also the areas where her skin was smoother than it had ever been. She saw the awkward fit of the dress, but also the curve of her waist that was slowly emerging thanks to hormone therapy. "I see. A work in progress," she said finally. Sally smiled. "Exactly. And that's okay. You're allowed to be a work in progress." As they sat talking, Nellie's phone buzzed with a notification. It was a reminder about a support group meeting that evening. Sally noticed the notification. "You should go," she encouraged. "It might help to talk to others who understand what you're going through." Nellie hesitated. "I don't know. I'm not sure I'm ready to face people right now." "Sometimes when we feel least ready is when we need support the most," Sally said gently. "But it's your choice. Just know that you're not alone in this." After Sally left, Nellie sat for a long time, considering her options. Finally, with a deep breath, she changed into more comfortable clothes and headed out the door. The community center was bustling with activity when Nellie arrived. She hesitated at the entrance to the meeting room, suddenly overwhelmed by doubt. Just as she was about to turn and leave, a warm voice called out to her. "First time?" Nellie turned to see a tall woman with striking red hair smiling at her. "Is it that obvious?" she asked with a weak laugh. The woman shrugged. "We all had a first time. I'm Sue, by the way." "Nellie," she replied, shaking Sue's offered hand. "Well, Nellie, why don't you come sit with me? I promise we don't bite." As they settled into chairs, Nellie found herself relaxing slightly. The room filled up quickly, and soon the meeting was underway. People shared their experiences, their triumphs, and their setbacks. Nellie listened, alternately comforted and intimidated by the stories she heard. When the floor opened for new members to speak, Sue gave her an encouraging nod. Nellie took a deep breath and stood up. "Hi, I'm Nellie," she began, her voice shaky. I'm not sure where to start." "Wherever feels right," the group facilitator said kindly. Nellie nodded, gathering her thoughts. "I guess I'm struggling. I'm doing all these things. Hormone therapy, electrolysis, voice training. But I still feel like I'm pretending. Like I'm not really a woman, just a man playing dress-up." Murmurs of understanding rippled through the group. Sue reached out and squeezed Nellie's hand supportively. "And I'm scared," Nellie continued, her voice gaining strength. "I'm scared of never passing, of always being seen as other. I'm scared of losing my job, my friends, my family, but most of all, I'm scared that I'll never truly feel like myself." As Nellie sat down, feeling drained but somehow lighter, others began to share their own experiences with similar fears and doubts. After the meeting, Sue approached Nellie. "Hey, a bunch of us usually grab coffee after these meetings. Want to join?" Nellie hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Yeah, I'd like that." The cafe was cozy, filled with the rich aroma of coffee and the low hum of conversation. Nellie found herself sandwiched between Sue and another woman named Maria, feeling both out of place and strangely at home. As they sipped their drinks, Sue turned to Nellie. "So, how long have you been transitioning?" "Officially, about 8 months," Nellie replied. "But I've known something was different for, well, forever, I guess." Maria nodded. "That's often how it goes. We spend so long trying to fit into the box we're given that we don't realize there's a whole world outside of it." "How did you know?" Nellie asked, curiosity overcoming her usual reticence. "That you were really women, I mean." Sue laughed softly. "Oh, honey, I still have days where I'm not sure, but then I remember how it felt to live as a man, and I know I could never go back to that." "It's different for everyone," Maria added. "For me, it was like finally putting on glasses after a lifetime of blurry vision." Suddenly, the world made sense. Nellie nodded slowly, turning these ideas over in her mind. "I guess, for me, it's like I've been playing a role my whole life. And now I'm finally allowed to be myself, but I don't know who that is yet." "That's okay," Sue said gently. "Cis women spend their whole lives figuring out who they are, too. We're just on a slightly different timeline." As the evening wore on, Nellie found herself opening up more and more. She shared her fears about passing, about dating, about navigating the world as a visibly trans woman. "Passing is a double-edged sword," Maria said thoughtfully. "On one hand, it can make life easier and safer, but on the other, it shouldn't be the goal of transition. The goal is to be yourself, whatever that looks like." Sue nodded in agreement. "And let's be real. Even CIS women don't always pass as whatever arbitrary standard society has set. How many times have you seen a tall, broad-shouldered CIS woman get misgendered?" Nellie considered this. "I never thought about it that way." "It's a process," Sue said, patting Nellie's hand. "You'll have good days and bad days. The key is to keep moving forward." As they prepared to leave, Nellie felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I really needed this." Sue pulled her into a hug. We've all been where you are, sweetie, and we're here whenever you need us. The next few months passed in a blur of continued treatments, support group meetings, and small steps forward. Nellie found herself gaining confidence, slowly but surely embracing her true self. One sunny afternoon, she stood in front of her mirror, preparing for a job interview. She smoothed down her blouse, adjusted her skirt, and took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, she really looked at herself. Not with criticism or doubt, but with acceptance. She saw the softness hormone therapy had brought to her features, the smooth skin where facial hair once grew, the subtle curves that were emerging. But more than that, she saw Nellie, not Simon, not some idealized version of femininity, but herself. A smile tugged at her lips. "Nice to meet you," she whispered to her reflection. As she walked out the door, head held high, Nellie felt a sense of peace wash over her. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever came next, not as Simon pretending to be Nellie, but as Nellie herself. The interview went better than Nellie could have hoped. The interviewer, a kind-faced woman named Evelyn, barely blinked at the name discrepancy on Nellie's resume, instead focusing on her qualifications and experience. As they wrapped up, Evelyn leaned forward with a warm smile. "Nellie, I have to say, your passion for this work really shines through. We'd be lucky to have you on our team." Nellie felt a surge of pride and gratitude. "Thank you so much. This opportunity means a lot to me." "We'll be in touch soon," Evelyn said, standing to shake Nellie's hand. "And Nellie, thank you for bringing your authentic self to this interview. It's refreshing to see." As Nellie left the office building, she felt as if she were walking on air. The sun seemed brighter, the city noises a symphony of possibility. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying over the keys as she texted Sue and Maria. "Just finished the interview. It went amazing. Drinks to celebrate." Their enthusiastic responses came quickly, and soon Nellie found herself at their favorite bar, raising a glass with her friends. "To new beginnings," Sue toasted, her eyes shining with pride. "And to being ourselves," Maria added, clinking her glass against the others. Nellie took a sip, savoring the moment. "I couldn't have done this without you both," she said softly. "Thank you for being there through all the ups and downs." Sue wrapped an arm around Nellie's shoulders. "That's what friends are for, honey. And look how far you've come." As they chatted and laughed, Nellie caught sight of her reflection in the mirror behind the bar. She saw a woman surrounded by friends, her face alight with joy and confidence. The disconnect she had felt for so long between her inner self and outer appearance was fading, replaced by a growing sense of harmony. Suddenly, Maria nudged her. "Don't look now, but that cute bartender has been checking you out all night." Nellie felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "What? No way!" Sue grinned mischievously. "Oh yes, why don't you go order us another round?" Gathering her courage, Nellie approached the bar. The bartender, a tall man with kind eyes and an easy smile, came over immediately. "What can I get for you?" he asked, his voice warm. Nellie placed her order, acutely aware of her heartbeat quickening. As the bartender prepared the drinks, he kept glancing up at her. "I haven't seen you in here before," he said casually. "I'm Tom." "Nellie," she replied, surprised at the steadiness in her voice. "I'm here with friends, celebrating a successful job interview." Tom's smile widened. "Congratulations! This round's on the house, then." As Nellie turned to bring the drinks back to her friends, Tom called out, "Hey, Nellie, maybe I could buy you a coffee sometime to properly celebrate your new job?" For a moment, Nellie froze, 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind. Could she do this? Was she ready to date? What if he found out she was trans? But then she looked back at Tom's open, hopeful expression and made a decision. "I'd like that," she said, surprising herself with her confidence. As she rejoined Sue and Maria, their excited whispers and giggles made her feel like a teenager again. But this time, it felt right. This time, she was living as her true self. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Nellie started her new job, throwing herself into the work with enthusiasm. Her colleagues were welcoming, and for the first time in her professional life, she felt truly comfortable in her own skin. Her date with Tom went surprisingly well. Over coffee, they talked about their shared love of old movies, their dreams for the future, and their favorite spots in the city. Nellie found herself relaxing, enjoying the simple pleasure of connecting with someone new. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the cafe, Tom reached across the table and took Nellie's hand. "I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Nellie," he said softly. "I'd love to see you again." Nellie felt a flutter in her chest, equal parts excitement and anxiety. "I'd like that too," she replied. "But Tom, there's something I need to tell you." She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what came next. "I'm transgender," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. Then he squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you for trusting me with that, Nellie. It doesn't change how I feel about you, or my desire to keep seeing you." Tears pricked at Nellie's eyes, relief washing over her. "Really?" Tom nodded, his smile warm and genuine. "Really, you're an amazing woman, Nellie. I'm just glad I get to know you." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.